Today's forum will be given by Alfred University Assistant Professor of Painting, Patrick Brennan. Patrick's talk, the precise title of which is clearly on the screen behind me, will be about art and cinema. Take it away, Patrick.
Thanks, John. Everyone can hear me okay? Okay, good. So we're just gonna jump right in here. And if the lights could go down as much as possible, that'd be great. One other caveat I'm stressed out about is this green thing is the zoom. It's not part of the aesthetic of my thing. So just so everyone understands that. Cool, I'll look at it on Zoom later. So thanks everyone for coming. I'm just gonna jump right in. I grew up watching movies all the time. Before I knew how to read a painting, I was studying films without realizing it. My background is rooted in painting, experimental video, and installation art. But tonight I want to talk about movies, the early encounters. Not cinema by theory, but cinema by experience. I want to start here with the great David Lynch.
And so I studied painting at the Boston Museum School and the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. While I was at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, I mostly painted at where I lived, but I also had a small cubicle in a big, large studio in the school. I was in this cubicle one night painting a garden at night, mostly black with some leaves green coming out. And I was sitting looking at this painting, and from the painting, I heard a wind. And then I saw the green start to move. And I said, oh, a moving painting.
I'll get to some of my own work later, but this painting from 2024 feels like a good place to begin. I was trying to make one of those moving paintings, and I was thinking about climate as being unstable, rain pouring down, a subtle nod to digital glitch, but worked out through paint and collage rather than on a screen. Today, I want to think about the shared language between painting and film. We'll walk through these 6 categories: character, environment, structure, perspective, light, and color. And we'll see how both mediums build meaning through them. I'll be moving between painting clips and film clips throughout. In both painting and cinema, character is often the entry point. Whether it's a painted figure or a filmed presence, it's where attention and empathy begin. The figure, the face, and the body all invite us in. Historically, painted portraits were a way of showing who someone was, and often how they wanted to be seen and remembered. Over time, that role shifts, styles change, and politics change, and expectations change. But portraiture still is about presence. It still asks, who is this person, and why are we being asked to look at them? An Elizabeth Peyton portrait often captures a sense of intimacy and fleetingness, with a mix of lush, vibrant colors and delicate brushwork. The figures in her portraits often seem to exist in liminal space, suspended between the personal and the public, evoking a sense of longing and reflection. Andy Warhol explores the same territory through film. His screen tests are portraits made with time. People sitting still, looking back at us, and simply being present, reminding us that portraiture, whether painted or filmed, is about attention and not about action. Over time, the focus has shifted from attention and likeness to identity and self-representation. What's changed is who gets portrayed how they're represented, and who controls that image. In painting and movies, the body is never neutral. In these images, the body becomes the stage. Rocky turns exhaustion into spectacle. Dunham and Gribben turn desire into something awkward and overexposed. And that tension between power and collapse is what makes these images feel so charged. Marlene Dumas's portraits are expressive and haunting. Her paintings tell us how someone occupies space. Her figures often appear exposed, raw, and unguarded, emphasizing vulnerability over power. In Woman Under the Influence, Cassavetes films a character whose emotions slowly unravel as she tries to connect with others. The camera stays close to her face, letting us watch those emotions shift, much like Dumas does with paint.
There we go, over here. Right there. And take that Seagram 7. Pour the lady a drink.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going. Okay. Cheers.
Cheers. Boy, you were thirsty. Oh, I thought they were yours.
I get no kick from champagne. Mere alcohol doesn't thrill me at all. So then tell me, how can it be true that I get a kick out of you? Sing.
I can't
Sing, sing. I get no kick from a plane. Flying too high with some guy in the sky is my...
Gina Rollins' performance in A Woman Under the Influence is one of the most fearless portrayals of emotional volatility in film history. I just want to pause and give a shout out here to Rollins and to the incredible painter and RISD professor Angela Dufresne, who has painted numerous portraits over the years of the actress. Rollins pushes emotions past contentment and into performance, and Dufresne pushes paint in the same way, and neither one of them ever softens their edge. If character is who we're looking at, then environment is where it exists, and how that space shapes the mood, the symbolism, and the story. Thomas Cole, the founder of the Hudson River School, painted large, dramatic landscapes where nature feels big and powerful. His paintings show beautiful places, but they can also feel overwhelming, like nature is something you stand in front of and not something that you can control. A lot of films use landscape in the same way. The setting isn't just a backdrop, it shapes the mood and it affects how we feel inside of the scene. Jen Gaudi's environments aren't landscapes in the traditional sense, they're like transcendent climates. Many contemporary painters share this drive to build vast visionary spaces. Vija Clemens renders infinite skies and seas with quiet intensity. Julie Moretu layers maps and energy fields like collapsing galaxies. And Taylor and Mark Rochon suggest that space isn't the main subject. Space isn't infinite, time is. Their paintings record duration, not just depth. In 2001, Kubrick treats space like a painted surface. Time accumulates inside of it. The environment doesn't frame the action, it becomes the action. In this Charles Birchfield paintings, things feel scrambled, quiet and uneasy at the same time. That's how nature feels to me. Painting is one of the few places where you can let those energies live together. In Days of Heaven, the landscape carries that same tension. It's beautiful and calm, but also threatening. Nature feels alive, but capable of turning on us at any moment. Malick's landscapes hold the same unease as Birchfield's landscapes, both offering beauty edged with instability. An artist like Shara Hughes uses color to activate the landscape. pushing it toward movement and intensity. And in Cy Twombly's rose paintings, color and gesture don't just describe the flowers, they carry the feeling of the viewer as well. They feel kind of dangerous. In The Wizard of Oz, color becomes seductive and sinister. The poppies are beautiful, but they'll put you to sleep. Just like Twombly's roses, the poppies are overwhelming. What looks lush and inviting carries many consequences. And in an Attel Adnan painting, place becomes simplified, symbolic, and timeless. The sun becomes a disk. The landscape is reduced to its bare essentials. It's no longer about where you are, but it's about how you exist in that place. Back to 2001. Like Adnan, Kubrick reduces landscape to elemental shapes. The horizon and the sun and the monolith, these are all symbols. Space becomes abstract before it becomes narrative, and time unfolds through geometry, scale, and stillness. Once a world exists in both painting and film, it's the structure that keeps it from falling apart. Symmetry can feel calm, but it can also feel engineered. Mary Weatherford introduces neon into her paintings, and the structure just jilts just a bit, just slightly. It's like, it's still symmetrical, but it's active. Symmetry emphasizes duality and isolation by locking the viewer into a controlled position. Beatrice Milhazes constructs her paintings through a layered transfer process, building structure from pre-painted elements being attached to the canvas later. In her work, structure isn't hidden beneath decoration. Decoration is actually the structure. In a Wes Anderson film, symmetry operates like it does in a painting. The centered frames feels composed and controlled. Characters are often held in place by the structure of the image. And like painters, Anderson uses symmetry to organize feeling and not just space.
Third examination of Dudley Heinsbergen. All right, Dudley. Make yours like mine.
Raleigh's next book was on the subject of a condition he called Heinsbergen syndrome.
Where's that red one gonna go? Down. Good, very good. My goodness, how interesting, how bizarre. Dudley suffers from a rare disorder combining symptoms of amnesia, dyslexia, and colorblindness with a highly acute sense of hearing. There is also evidence of...
I'm not colorblind, am I?
I'm afraid you are.
Where symmetry contains and controls space, Robert Longo's wave pulls you into it. The composition is destabilizing and the eye can never really rest. Leslie Vance breaks the wave into color and a sort of rhythm. Space becomes fluid rather than directional, and energy is dispersed, much less violent and way more atmospheric. In Koyaanisqatsi, motion drives the story. Images layer kind of like paint does on a canvas. The film functions as a system that pushes the entire plot. This film truly is a defining work of experimental film. Agnes Martin uses structure as a quiet container. Structure here isn't expressive, it's stabilizing, almost comfortable in a way. Martin wants you to view her paintings in peace. An Kawara uses structure to mark time, literally. The painting records every single day held in a strict repeated form. Structure here is the rule system, meaning unfolds through accumulation over time, and the system is the whole point. For Sarah Mora, structure isn't a grid, it's operational. It's about cities and finance, circulation, systems that organize movement. Her paintings always raise the question, who designed this system and who is moving inside of it? Look at these stills from Edward Scissorhands in The Truman Show. Perfect rows, controlled color, repetition. These neighborhoods feel almost abstract. In both movies, the characters don't just live in a space, they live in a design system. Again, who built it, who benefits from it, and who's allowed to move freely inside of it. In The Ice Storm, the same structure begins to become fragile. Ice makes the system visible and brittle, and it's on the verge of collapse, and actually will eventually collapse. If structure gives us order, then perspective determines where we stand in it. Spike Lee popularized the double dolly shot to destabilize space. By placing both camera and actor in synchronized dollies, the character appears to glide or float unnaturally through the environment. Space becomes unstable, and the perspective gives way to sensation. Honestly, this might be my favorite painting of all time. It asks you to look here and there and here and there. Your eye moves the way the camera would. The dolly shot sliding across the ridge is basically what it feels like. And perspective isn't stable, it's stretched and compressed. It's not 2D or 3D. It's constructed space and cinematic space. It's like 1000D. Roger Brown treats buildings like stacked frames. The viewer moves across the surface while the structure stays rigid. Repetition becomes the perspective. Space is intimate and vast at the same time, and movement happens through scanning and not really illusion. In Rear Window, the building reads like a canvas, a grid of windows, each one a frame within a frame. The camera moves side to side, not inward and outward. Our perspective is fixed, and that fixed position shapes everything. What's emphasized, what's distorted, and what's withheld. In Dana Schutt's career-defining painting presentation, the perspective is pushed forward on purpose. Scale slips, bodies pile up, the space feels wrong. Foreground and background collapse, and viewpoints feel invasive. In Schutt's world, figures don't sit in space, they jam themselves into it. Memory and longing become physical and very uncomfortable. In One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, like a Schutt's painting, space becomes oppressive. Rooms feel crowded, shallow, and inescapable. Bodies are packed into institutional space, and the environment presses back on its characters. Peter Doig's snow paintings feel suspended, the horizon drifts. The perspective isn't visible anymore, it's ambient. It's almost like a hum. Doig's snow paintings are like The Shining after the trauma settles. And speaking of The Shining, Kubrick turns perspective into a maze that's uneasy at best. The world feels perfectly ordered and still deeply wrong. If perspective sets the view, then light is what tells us how to feel. What's revealed and what's hidden, and where our attention lands. Light and shadow guide perception in both painting and movies. From Caravaggio and Rembrandt to Rothko, light becomes a way to control atmosphere, tension, and presence. When Gerhard Richter paints the sky, light isn't even dramatic. It simply exists. It's almost passive and low contrast. Loie Howell treats light like pressure. Gradients feel radiant and contained. Light here is bodily, concentrated, and inward facing. Peter Halley's fluorescent colors mimic artificial glow. The light feels synthetic, referring directly to some kind of infrastructure. And Jordan Castile uses light to anchor bodies in lived space. Light often comes from the windows, the streets, and the interiors, mostly ordinary spaces. And the figure is not spotlighted, but it's held by its environment. Van Hanos uses light and shadow in a very direct way. Darkness is broken by bright focused light, which creates mood and tension. The same use of contrast, light against deep shadow, is at the heart of Ridley Scott's 1982 film Blade Runner. The lighting does as much storytelling as the image itself, much more really. The use of chiaroscuro is central to the visual narrative of this film.
I'd take him to the doctor.
Wasp crawling on your arm.
I'd kill it.
Nude photo of a girl.
Is this testing whether I'm a replicant or a lesbian, Mr. Deckard?
You show it to your husband. He likes it so much he hangs it on your bedroom wall.
I wouldn't let him.
If light calmly describes mood and atmosphere, then color must insist on it. Color is light made visible, but filtered, slowed down, absorbed, and bounced back. In painting especially, color isn't just light, it's experienced light. Frankenthaler let paint soak and spread like memory. The result is both spontaneous and controlled. Color is the structure and the space all at once. That's exactly what Rothko was thinking. Color is something you enter, it's not something you just look at. Just like Rothko, filmmakers use color to create an experience that you enter, not just an image that you can decode. In film, color functions like a lighting for the psyche. It tells us how to feel before we even know it. That's exactly what's happening in the dream sequence in Hitchcock's Vertigo. Scotty's desire turns into anxiety, fragmentation, and eventually vertigo. For Amy Silman, color isn't symbolic or cinematic. Really, it's unstable. It changes as the painting changes. Color is negotiated, layered, scraped back, and reconsidered. Where Silman revises and negotiates color, Mickalene Thomas proclaims it loudly. They build dense, commanding fields of color and pattern. The surface isn't just an illusion, it insists on its presence. For Sarah Kane, color doesn't describe space, it transforms it. Color spreads and it leans, it climbs the wall, and it ultimately builds a world. And sometimes color doesn't describe a world, it declares it. Few scenes in cinematic history make that declaration more clear than this one. The shift from sepia to Technicolor isn't simply a change in palette, it's a construction of a completely new reality. I think that moment when the door opens and everything turns to color might have been the first time I understood that color isn't decoration. It's dreamlike and it reshapes perceived reality. These paintings are loosely rooted in that scene. What I'm chasing in my own work is that space where dream and reality overlap, where color doesn't just describe the world, it builds one. This piece nods to 2001. The monolith is pure geometry, a foreign body in space, an interloper. But here the void becomes paint, layered and unsettled. And to be clear, I don't just make paintings about movies, I barely do. But I wanted to begin with these two because they are fairly direct. In these paintings, the surface feels mapped, like a diagram that has been built and scratched into. But there's no single anchor. Instead, you get floating elements, inserted panels, and interruptions. It's several systems overlapping and maybe starting to come apart, actually. Life Raft was made during the pandemic as a metaphor for isolation and desperation. I was thinking about how to build things to stay afloat. The piece became a kind of survival vehicle, reflecting that sense of trying to hold things together while everything felt uncertain. I'm deeply interested in how film cuts, repeats, and sequences time. In this piece called Calendar, I was asking if a painting could operate in that way. I'm interested in the moment when painting stops pretending to be a picture and starts acknowledging that it's an object. I love that tension between image and thing. In Home, I was thinking about a painting as a kind of refuge, how panels and surfaces and colors can build a place rather than depict one. Hippie Tree is built from simple units, repeated elements, stacked systems, and it feels diagrammatic, but it absolutely is not. It's totally a hippie tree. This looks like a landscape, but it's really construction. It's between something natural and something staged, like it could have been lifted right off of the set. In this exhibition called The Cave, the space was deliberately constructed, but I didn't want it to feel finished. I needed it to feel provisional and almost makeshift, like a shelter held together by ideas and decisions. You're not fixed in front of it. You can move around it, come and go. It's not monumental at all. It's approachable. This installation called Support System grew from that interest in how painting can act like a set or a frame, a space that holds both order and instability. I want this work to feel cinematic, but also homemade, where color and light drive the content. I got to show this work last year at the Fosdick Nelson as part of our painting faculty exhibition called Painting in Translation, which is really cool because when you make these large scale installations, which I've been doing for the last 6 or 7 years, you really need the space to make it. So my studio and my house and my car and my office is just filled with bits and pieces of these kind of world building things I can do, but often need the space. So shout out to the Fosdick Nelson because it was a really beautiful way to show the piece with that large floor and also to like get to show with my awesome colleagues. This is the theater I grew up in. We had $1.50 Tuesdays and midnight screenings. This is where I learned to look and to be patient and to let things unfold, and to step inside of a picture and live inside of it for as long as possible. Thanks.
Questions for Patrick? All of your film analysis stuff, I know at least for the way my brain works, if I was skilled like that at analyzing film, I would have a hard time watching a movie to enjoy it. How do you do that?
Like I said in the beginning of this, I watched these films before I had like a real language for art and critique. These films were something I kind of came up on in a world of not even knowing anything about art. So I just kind of thought about them as entertainment and they kind of were impressed on me in that way. And then later I started making art and kind of thinking about what it was that like visually kind of stimulated me and kept me going. So there's a little of both, but it's a good question. And I really struggle as someone who's like based a lot of my work and my history on films and like that experience. I don't watch as many films anymore at all. I barely have the attention sometimes to get through it. So it's interesting. It's rooted in a certain time. I mean, this kind of probably tells you how old I am, but a certain time of when I grew up, a lot of these films were shaping my life.
I think you just ruined my question, but the question I was going to ask you is, why isn't there a film society here, and why aren't you the head of it?
I don't know, because we don't do film, and I definitely have never physically made a film, but I work in experimental video, and we have one of the greatest video departments ever, really, in our expanded media department in the art school. So that's where I was trained as an undergrad long time ago on looking at video and looking at film. But again, I didn't know until I got here that I would look at it in a more analytical way. And there should be a film club. I don't know. I don't know.
It seems like
I'm so busy.
There's so little to do in Alfred. There ought to be once a week a screening of some of these amazing movies you just.
Yeah,
put
well,
up
we
there.
screened, I mean, I screened 2001 last semester. We screened Mystery Train. We had James, our history teacher, is screening a couple things over the next couple of weeks. So
All
we
they have to
try.
do is take your class.
Take the class or look at the posters. This also is, I didn't mention, this was a class that I taught to this research kind of really started when I developed the class that a bunch of you were in called Painting in the Movies for our juniors, which was really awesome to kind of see everyone sort of how they reacted to these films and kind of where this talk came from.
I'm just kind of curious because I knew several of those films. 3 in particular, though, I gravitated toward for sonic reasons, for the music. And I would almost never think of them visually first because of that. And you made no reference to that. I'm just wondering if that affected or interpreted, like Boy on a Scotsy, for instance, Mystery Train. I think of those as heavily music.
Yes.
Did that play a factor in the way you saw them?
Yes, absolutely. And sound becomes a big part of my relationship to them. And in my own work, I make film and I make videos that are kind of a little more narrative. I use sound and I collaborate with sound makers, and it's a big part of that. That said, in the research for this, I kind of just pushed it aside for a minute, even though I did pick films that I knew had the best sound. And so, yes, it's total inspiration from most of those films. Equally, maybe sometimes 10 years ago, I would have done this talk on the sound part. It's just sort of where I go back and forth, but yeah.
I am also actually very interested in the sound. I wrote, one of the questions I wrote was, and it's not directly to you. I was like, who scored 2001, A Space Odyssey? Because the soundtrack's pretty epic.
I don't
But
remember the name of the person who did the score, but it was like 4 people that did most of the music and 1 person brought the score together. But
okay, interesting.
example.
I think my question for you though is, because I don't know if I've ever seen sound show up in the work of yours. Is it something you include like with your painting practice, with your installations, or as you see it as like kind of separate?
yeah, in support system, I had a full-blown 12-minute movie that I made playing in the center of it with a soundtrack that was developed by myself and the sound musician Shy Layers out of Atlanta, and we kind of put it together, and then I sort of scored it. So yes, I've done 4 of those big installations, and all of them had video and 2 of them had video with sound. And thinking about how sound occupies a space during a group show is sometimes complicated. So the sound was a little low. If I had the whole room, I would turn that sound up. Hi.
You said earlier that you're not watching films as much, but do you find yourself sometimes maybe going back to the films you grew up with to kind of still influence your works?
Yes. I watch 2001 probably twice a year. I watch The Truman Show pretty regularly. Because I taught that class and was developing readings and things around the class, I was kind of rewatching a bunch of those. So to be honest, if I'm going to sit and watch a film, a lot of times it's one of these or something older. And if I'm going to watch something new, it tends to have to be an hour long. And I'm negotiating that with myself. I'm stressed about it. I care about movies and film, and they're just real hard lately. And I can't exactly explain why.
I am a fan of both painting and film, and I have mixed feelings about this film. I was wondering your thoughts on What Dreams May Come.
I've never fully seen it. I've read a lot about it in researching this, and a lot of people talk about painting and the relationship between art and that film. And I need to do a little bit more research. And thanks for throwing one at me, because that would be cool to kind of add to it. But it absolutely came up a bunch of times when I was talking to people and researching this whole thing.
Please join me in thanking Patrick again and see you all next week.
Thank you, guys.